remember this, this thing is coming back into the atmosphere at about 25,000 miles an hour.
Is it the nose cone for the moon?
Yeah, for the moon.
Yeah,
the
I
re-entry.
saw something because it has to be like, it has to have the heat shield on it and stuff.
No, we're confusing things. Let's don't talk about it. That is the space shuttle. He was talking about, I was talking about the moon rocket where we come back from the moon.
Yeah, and it has
Okay,
to, it has
okay.
like that cone.
When you're coming back from the space station, you're only going about 18,000 miles an hour. When you're coming back from the moon,
Only 18,000.
you're going 24,000 miles an hour. And that's the reason it was so critical, because it gets so terribly hot as it goes faster and faster through the atmosphere, that if it burned away, it would keep on burning everything, just like a meteor. You have a meteor rock that comes in from space and it hardly hits the ground because it's all burns up. Well, you'd be the same way if you were coming back from space and traveling that fast. You'd burn up too. It's yeah.
So they just kind of like, it was like a trial run, and they turned out it didn't work.
So what we did, first we tested them there in Huntsville, and they would test all these different materials, and to test them, they would put them right up into the flame of a jet, of a rocket motor. And then they'd fire that off because you need the speed and the erosion and the temperature of very hot things. That's as close as we could do on the Earth. And so they fiddled around with all kinds of ceramics and various other things. And actually we finally wound up with something that would seem to hold up. And it was Formica, like you use on kitchen counters.
What is it?
Formica?
Huh.
You've heard about Formica.
I've heard the word, I don't remember what it
You
is.
use it on kitchen counters.
Yeah, sure.
Is it like the sealant, or is it like the actual counter?
It's the actual counter material.
Okay.
It resists heat real well. It flakes off with the abrasion of the air and so forth, but it doesn't tear up. And so where a kitchen counter might be a 1/4 inch thick, this was a foot thick.
Oh.
And you know, when they had to test it to see if it's really going to do the job, full life-size thing. So they took a Saturn moon rocket and they fired it straight up in the air, and it went up about 80 miles, and then it turned over and came straight back down again. And it even had a booster coming back down again. So that's as fast as they could make that thing go to see if the nose cone is going to hold together or not. And it held together. And so they recovered it and decided that's what they're going to go. Otherwise, they didn't want any burned up astronauts. If they had them, probably would have killed the program right then. They say astronauts are hard to find. Good astronauts. So that's how they came up with that nose cone. The heat panels and the heat shields on the orbiter are entirely different now. They're ceramics, and the white ones are kind of lightweight, but then there is on the areas on the front and on the bottom, you notice they're all black. It's an entirely different kind of material because of the abrasion. The white stuff only protects you from the heat. The black stuff is to take, but it's much heavier. It's a carbon material, and they've had problems with that since the beginning of time, and it has always been a problem. If anything hits it or knocks a hole in it, it breaks.
It seems, well, why wouldn't they make it black on the bottom? Because it seems like that would just attract more heat.
No, it doesn't attract heat. It's because of the nature of the stuff and the binders, it's black. And the same reason that you notice that the big external tank is always red, saves paint. They could paint it white, make it pretty, but then it would cost them about 60 pounds of payload. So they said, don't paint it. That's why it's red. That is the color, the natural color of the foam.
Oh.
The comb is the foam on it is about 3.5 inches to 4 inches thick.
And then they would have to repaint it.
No, they never
No?
use external tanks but
Oh,
once.
okay,
They're not
yeah.
used but once.
You know the Saturn rocket?
Yeah.
I was watching something. I thought it said it had like 1 billion pounds of force per square foot, or I don't know. How do you measure
Okay.
force?
Of
thrust, that's what it is.
The main stage had 3, 4, 5, 8 engines. Yeah, 8 engines, and each engine is putting out 1.5 million pounds of thrust. 1.5 million pounds of thrust on each engine, and they had, wait a minute, I said 8. They had 5 engines. I take it back. They had 5 engines. And that gave them, wait a minute, let me see. We had 12,000 pounds at liftoff. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Yeah, we had 8 engines. We had a cluster in the middle of 4 engines. Then they had an outer cluster around the edge of 4 more engines. And each engine is putting out 1.5 million pounds. Huge pieces of machinery.
Were those using the oxygen and hydrogen ones?
That's right. That's right. And you had to have a pump because where the liquids were pumped from the tank that had a pressure of about 60 pounds of pressure. But it was being pumped into the thrust chamber where the fire took place, and that's over 1,000 pounds. So you had to take your fluid from about 60 pounds to over 1,000 pounds of pressure.
How'd they do that?
And so that is the pump. That's the turbine pump that would drive that the turbine that would drive the pump to pump the fluid up there. And believe it or not, that turbine pump was how much was that? About 4,500 horsepower for just the pump.
Huh.
And it was quite a tricky thing because you had to start the thing off, had to bootstrap it to make the thing go. Because, in other words, you had to start the pump to get the fluid in the tank up to pressure and into the thrust chamber. That had to start, and when you got the pressure up and the fire started, then that would turn your turbines.
Huh.
So how do you get the thing started in the first place? You can't put a crank on it and get in here. Crank it up, boys, and we're going to take off. They had an explosive device. I say explosive, it was like a solid propellant in there, in an iron chamber, and they'd light that off remotely, electrically, and that would explode, and the gases coming out of that would start the
force
pump, and would start the pump, and the pump would pump the fluid and down into the chamber, and then it would come back and it would run itself. So that's what they call a bootstrap. It was,
So, did you ever meet any of the astronauts, or?
oh yeah.
Oh, so you
I
did?
met, I met a large number of them.
What about Buzz Aldrin?
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
about Neil Armstrong?
No,
No?
I didn't meet him. That was on another one.
Buzz Aldrin?
Yeah, I met Buzz Aldrin and.
How about John Glenn? Did you meet John Glenn?
I don't think I did.
Wasn't John Glenn the guy that went on like 3 different ones?
Yes. He was the first one. They were first concerned about, we put a man into space, even low Earth orbit. Maybe he'll come back dead. Everybody'd be mad at us. So they finally started out, they didn't know what to do, so they decided, first we'll fly a monkey.
oh yeah.
And so they flew some monkeys up there, and they flew them, and they came back and were still alive and kicking. And they said, I guess if a monkey can do it, maybe a man can learn how.
Didn't
Yeah.
they send up a dog too? or
No.
something?
That was the Russians.
And,
Right.
and
Well, I don't know if we did either, but I know, like, the Russian dog Loki, wasn't that his name?
I don't know.
I think that was, I don't know that for certain. I could be wildly wrong on that.
Didn't you meet the monkey too?
Not personally.
Oh.
He was for a long time. They were in that Space and Rocket Museum in Huntsville.
Hmm.
They had the monkeys there. They tell me that they were very temperamental and would bite you every chance they got.
Yeah,
Why? Just because they went
they
into
were being
space and they were-
poked a lot and tested.
They'd been stabbed with so many needles and this and that and taken blood and this kind of stuff. I guess it made them temperamental or something. But they were only little monkeys. They weren't even big monkeys. They were just little things like
Oh,
that.
really?
And
Tiny.
yes, the first capsule they sent up was just a little bitty thing. It was about the size of an airplane cockpit. One-man airplane cockpit, like you have in a fighter jet. I mean, you're squeezed in there about that wide and about this wide, and you got a bunch of dials and controls, and that's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got stronger, and they said, well, maybe we'll put 2 men up there. So they put 2 people up there. So that was the what do they call that program? 2 people. I forget.
Gemini?
Gemini. Thank you. That was 2 people. Geminis. They put 2 people up there, so they had somebody to talk to, I guess. And then they rapidly went into the 3 people, because that's what they were going to get ready for the moon rocket. They put 3 people in there, but that was only, you could reach across that. That wasn't much more about that wide. There again, the big limitation on that was the
Really?
nose,
It's only
the
that
nose
wide?
cone. The nose cone was was heavy, and you're flying this all the way to the moon and back again. And so it was a terrible weight penalty. So you had to keep it as small as they could.
That's tiny.
Well, sure.
Was it really this wide across?
You just about. You had 3 people sitting side by side and close together.
Seems
and
like
that was
they would
it.
get rather angry at each other.
No, they had to be friends or else. Else you get out and walk.
Get out. You can walk home.
Yeah. Those capsules were quite complicated. They were made by North American Rockwell out at Long Beach. Not Long Beach, in Los Angeles.
Tell the story of how they, like, etched the... Didn't they have a terrible time getting the, like, fuel tank light enough? Or thin enough?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had a program like that thing that we had to go into a great big weight reduction program.